A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist. A link is given in the video description. Episode 52. The atmosphere in the office turned tense. All of a sudden, someone knocked on the door. Then, the head of the kindergarten entered, chuckling. He then greeted Lucian by saying, "Mr. Farwell, why didn't you tell me that you were coming? I would have come to welcome you myself." The moment the head of the kindergarten received news of Lucian's appearance, he rushed over to where Lucian was. The daughter of the Farwell family was currently enrolled in their kindergarten. Therefore, he had to find a way to get Farwell Group to invest in their kindergarten no matter what. That way, their kindergarten would rise in the social ranks of Horrington. The head of the kindergarten came in preparation to curry favor with Lucian, so he was not expecting to be greeted by the confrontation the second he stepped into the office. Almost immediately, he figured out that something must have happened to the Farwell family's daughter. Upon realizing that, the head of the kindergarten's smile froze. "What's the matter? Did Pam do something wrong?" The head of the kindergarten was swift to come back to his senses, and before Lucian could say anything, he turned and began berating Pamela. "What's the matter with you? You only have that many kids in the class, but you still can't take good care of them." Pamela's heart took a dip, and she muttered, "Sir, Mr. Leishman's child was crying. Their family has invested a large sum of money into our kindergarten, so how can I just ignore the kid? All I did was checked on that child for a brief moment. I never thought that the kids would bully her." The Leishman family was currently the largest investor in the kindergarten, and the head of the kindergarten had told her to keep a closer eye on the Leishman's son. Hence, a stumped look appeared on the head of the kindergarten's face. Then, he soon realized that even Austin Leishman himself had to bow to Lucian if he were here. After weighing the situation, it went without saying that he had to prioritize Lucian over Austin. "Mr. Farwell, I have a clearer picture of what is going on now. You're right. This is our kindergarten's responsibility," the head of the kindergarten immediately apologized. "Don't worry. I will definitely make the children who bullied Ms. Estella apologize to her. Also, I'll assign 2 more teachers to Estella's class. That way, Ms. Estella will surely get the best care." "You don't need to do that," Roxanne said with a frown. "I've already chided the children, and they've already apologized to Essie." Then, turning to Lucian, she stiffly uttered, "However, I'll have to trouble you, Mr. Farwell, to not let the parents of those children come after me." She had laid a finger on those children because she was an adult. If their parents were to find out her true identity, they would certainly come after her. Roxanne did not wish to be in more trouble. However, the head of the kindergarten understood it wrongly. He thought that Roxanne was dissatisfied with the way he dealt with the situation and was hinting to him to get those parents to apologize in person. Hence, the head of the kindergarten hesitated. He did not know about Roxanne's relationship with Estella, but the little girl was clearly reliant on Roxanne. Even though Lucian was there, the girl was still staying in her arms. Therefore, the head of the kindergarten assumed that Roxanne was close to the Farwell family. With that, the head of the kindergarten quickly said, "They definitely won't be finding trouble with you. I'll notify their parents right away and have them come here to apologize to Mr. Farwell and Ms. Estella in person." Roxanne tensed up as she realized that the head of the kindergarten must have mistaken her words. Subconsciously, she turned to Lucian, hoping that he would say something to clarify the situation. The matter would be blown out of proportion if the parents came over. However, Lucian continued to look at the head of the kindergarten without any expression. He had no intention to reject the latter's suggestion. Seemingly sensing Roxanne's gaze, Lucian turned toward her. Roxanne was stupefied when their eyes met. It took her a few seconds to come back to her senses and signal Lucian to stop the head of the kindergarten. "I don't have much time. Tell them to hurry up." It was as if he did not understand the look she gave him. "What?" The head of the kindergarten was quick to agree to it and promptly went to call the parents. Once the other man was out, Roxanne turned to look at Lucian disapprovingly. "You don't need to blow this out of proportion. Those kids might take out their anger on Essie after getting scolded by their parents. The lesson I taught them was more than enough." Lucian's eyes flitted toward the girl in Roxanne's arms before anger seeped into those eyes. Those parents could not educate their children well and let their kids bully Essie, so it is normal for them to have to pay the price for it. The consequences await them will only be more severe if they don't apologize to us today. There was no way he was going to let those parents who allowed their children bully others off so easily. Roxanne parted her lips, but when she recalled that she was just an outsider, she closed her mouth again. "What's the matter? Ms. Jarvis, you've already bullied those children, but you're unwilling to teach the adults a lesson?" Lucian questioned, shooting her a strange look. Their eyes met for a brief second before Roxanne quickly lowered her gaze. "That isn't what I mean. This is your family matter, Mr. Farwell. It's best if you make the final decisions yourself." She had only bullied the children because she was enraged, after all. Lucian continued watching her grimly. Right as he was about to ask her why she was there, the head of the kindergarten suddenly came back inside. "I've notified the parents about the matter. They said they'll rush over as quickly as they can. Please wait for them a little while, Mr. Farwell." With that, he curiously turned to Roxanne and cautiously asked, "She is?" Roxanne instinctively turned to Lucian. Yet, Lucian was looking at her, waiting for her to introduce herself. There was even a look in his eyes that Roxanne could not decipher. Despite his silence, Roxanne managed to understand what he wanted to say to her. The man was asking her what identity she was going to take up after claiming to be Estella's mother earlier. A long silence later, Roxanne squeezed out, "I am Essie's aunt." Then, she lowered her head guiltily. If the head of the kindergarten were to confirm her identity with Lucian, she was unsure if Lucian would actually go along with her words. Fortunately, the head of the kindergarten did not ask more questions. He only nodded at her before returning the focus of the conversation to Estella. "Is Ms. Estella hurt? I'll get the doctor on duty to take a look at her right now." At that, he took out his phone, about to make the call. Roxanne rejected him. "No need. I've already treated her wounds." Hearing that, the head of the kindergarten sighed in relief before thanking Roxanne profusely. Roxanne fell silent after that. The head of the kindergarten wanted to begin buttering Lucian up, but when he noticed the other man's gaze on Estella, he sheepishly clamped his mouth shut. Pin-drop silence ensued in the office after what seemed like forever. Hurried footsteps sounded out in the corridor. Then, a few women dressed to their nines entered the office in a haste. The moment they saw Lucian, they began offering their apologies. Ms. Farwell, I heard that my child has been insensible and injured Ms. Estella. I'm really sorry. We didn't educate our boy well enough. Please don't worry. We'll definitely give him a good round of scolding when we get home. Where's the boy? Get him here and have him apologize to Ms. Estella sincerely. In no time, only the words of apologies filled the air in the office. Go back and teach your kids to behave. After what seemed like an eternity, Lucian finally uttered, I believe kids are not born spiteful. If this happens again, I will take that to mean everyone here holds a grudge against Farwell Group. Although Lucian sounded understanding, his words carried an undertone of threat. Everyone agreed unhesitatingly with Lucian. However, as Lucian remained silent, no one dared to leave. Roxanne spoke suddenly. Essie is fine now. If there's nothing else, I'm heading back. After she was done speaking, Roxanne wanted to return Estella to Lucian and was prepared to leave. Nonetheless, Estella held onto Roxanne tightly and refused to let go of her. Estella had not seen Roxanne for quite some time, so it was understandable why she was reluctant to leave the woman. Moreover, Estella had spent a great deal of effort in order to bring about the meeting between her father and Roxanne. She definitely would not let the latter go this easily. Essie, Roxanne felt awkward with Estella holding tightly onto her as the other parents stared at her curiously. Refusing to let go of Roxanne, Estella said stubbornly, No. I don't want Daddy. Upon hearing Estella's words, everyone exchanged looks. Ahem, someone realized the awkwardness of the situation and found an excuse to leave the scene. Mr. Farwell, I will educate my child properly when I return home. I still have a meeting to attend, so I have to get back to work now. Lucian responded with an indifferent hum. Upon seeing this, the rest of the crowd followed suit and left the office. Everybody heaved a sigh of relief when they were out of the office. They did not know how Roxanne was related to the Farwell family, but judging from the situation earlier, Estella had made Lucian look bad. If it were another family in such a situation, perhaps they would have stayed to find out what was going on. However, when it came to Lucian, nobody dared to do so. The office became empty all of a sudden. Roxanne felt something was different but continued to pacify Estella without looking at Lucian. Essie, be a good girl. I have to get back to work. You should go to your daddy. Estella shook her head forcefully. Lucian felt bitter upon seeing that Roxanne was trying to avoid him again. It was she who said Essie is none of her business anymore. Yet, she was the one who showed up at Essie's kindergarten. She was the one who went back on her own words, but now she's acting as though I forced her to do so. With these thoughts on his mind, Lucian said icily, Essie, come here. Don't stay in the way of Ms. Jarvis' work. Stella turned a deaf ear to Lucian's words. She pitifully tugged at Roxanne's arm and held up her injured hand. It hurts. Roxanne's heart ached when she looked at the red marks on Estella's hand, but she really had no idea how to face Lucian if she stayed. After a short while, Roxanne gently blew some air onto Estella's injured hand. All right, I have blown away all the pain now. It won't hurt anymore. Seeing that Estella was still reluctant to let go of her, Roxanne softened her tone further. I really have to get back to work, Essie. You be a good girl in school, and I will visit you in 2 days' time, okay? After speaking to Estella, Roxanne glanced sheepishly at Lucian. This time around, she had shown up without informing him. She wondered if Lucian would sternly refuse to let her visit again. Thankfully, Lucian seemed to understand the purpose behind her words and remained silent. Estella looked skeptical. You won't come back if you leave. Roxanne patted Estella's head and said, I will come back. Didn't I come here on my own accord this time? Around? I'm worried about you, so I'll visit you again in 2 days. Roxanne shuddered in fright. That's enough. Lucian's dangerous tone of voice terrified her nonetheless. He wasn't about to let her off. Wouldn't becoming Essie's mother make you feel more at ease? Her chest felt tight, and she had difficulty breathing upon his words. This wasn't the first time Lucian had asked her that question, but her answer remained the same. This round was no different. She gritted her teeth and pulled away. You're overthinking things. I care for Essie because I feel bad for how much she relies on me. That's it. Lucian closed in. I wonder what Essie would think of this when she learns that you care for her only because you feel bad for her. Roxanne's heart fell when she heard him. She gritted her teeth and met his eyes. I do like Essie, but that doesn't mean I must become her mother. After all, I don't intend on taking advantage of you, and I believe you don't, too. Lucian's eyes darkened. How are you so sure that I don't? Her pupils constricted as her heart shook. Is he saying what I think he's saying? If that's so, how could he say something like that? Isn't he getting married to Aubrey soon? The words Lucian had spoken to her when he was courting her flashed through her mind, and she suddenly thought of a possibility. Up till now, Lucian was merely looking for a mother Estella would like. That would mean Aubrey might still be under consideration. Roxanne's eyes turned cold at that thought. Don't say something so misleading. Mr. Farwell. I already have Archie and Benny. I don't have the energy to care for one more child. I'm sure Ms. Pearson will do a great job caring for Essie if you insist on finding a mother she would like, even if it is for your sake. Roxanne lowered her eyes and kept her emotions under control. I've said everything I need to say. If there's nothing else, I will take my leave. Lucian's eyes darkened. He reached out and grabbed her wrist with great force. Roxanne turned to look at him. She was about to speak up when an ear-piercing honk sounded. She turned toward the direction of the sound. Instinctively a car rolled to a stop behind hers. The next thing she knew, Aubrey stormed out of the vehicle with a grim expression. Ms. Pearson's here. Roxanne looked away as she reminded Lucian of Aubrey's arrival. Lucian frowned, turned around, and gave Aubrey a glance. Roxanne quickly pulled away. She got into her car nonchalantly and was about to leave when Aubrey called out to her, Ms. Jarvis, it's been a long time. Don't you have anything to say to me? Roxanne could tell from Aubrey's tone that she was angry. Aubrey approached Lucian with an awkward smile and fixed Roxanne with a murderous stare. How dare she show up here? Aubrey was secretly glad she was on good terms with Pamela, as Pamela was the one who notified her the moment Lucian met up with Roxanne. A wave of fury crashed through Aubrey upon the thought of Lucian and Roxanne being together. Why does this woman keep showing up everywhere? However, she forced a smile as she couldn't express her disgust for Roxanne since Lucian was around. On the other hand, Roxanne never thought Aubrey would call out to her when she was about to leave. It would have been rude of her if she ignored Aubrey with that thought in mind. Roxanne paused in her tracks, turned around, and greeted Aubrey coldly. "It's been a while, Ms. Pearson." Aubrey smiled. "If I remember correctly, your kids don't study here. So what brings you here today, Ms. Jarvis? Are you planning to transfer them to this kindergarten so they can attend school with Essie?" Roxanne's heart sank at that. She could tell what Aubrey was hinting at even though she didn't say it straight to her face. Aubrey was accusing her of using Archie and Benny to approach Lucian by transferring her two kids to the same kindergarten as Estella. Roxanne denied her accusation without hesitation as soon as she realized what Aubrey was getting at. "You're overthinking things, Ms. Pearson. Archie and Benny are doing fine in school. I have no plans of transferring them over, nor do I have the time and effort to do so." Aubrey chuckled casually and started to put on an act. "It's okay. I can help if you ever want to transfer your kids over. Essie likes being friends with Archie and Benny. It'll be good company for her." Roxanne's lips twitched. "That won't be necessary. I only came to check on Essie. Essie is well taken care of. You have nothing to worry about, Ms. Jarvis." Aubrey continued coldly. "You have nothing to do with Essie. Moreover, you are Lucian's ex-wife. It will be in our best interest for you to keep your distance from Lucian and Essie as we are getting married soon." Lucian's and Roxanne's faces fell when Aubrey mentioned their divorce. Roxanne lowered her eyes and balled her hands into fists. She was reminded of how she had brought her two kids up alone in a foreign country after the divorce. At the moment, all her hardships in the past 6 years turned into hatred for Lucian and Aubrey. She wouldn't have landed in such a huge mess if not for the two of them. She couldn't understand why she would want to worry herself about some kid Lucian had with another woman now that she was back. A wave of sadness washed over her as she smiled bleakly upon that thought. Aubrey, standing by Lucian's side, was about to say something more to make her stand but was interrupted by Lucian. "Are you done?" Aubrey gulped as she was jolted back to her senses. Only then did she realize she was being too arrogant just now. "I'm sorry, Lucian. I was worried since Ms. Yaxley told me she saw a suspicious individual barge into the kindergarten and interact with Essie." She pushed the blame onto Pamela and Roxanne brazenly. Then, she turned to Roxanne and said kindly, "It's not that I'm stopping you from visiting Essie. I just hope that you can let me know beforehand in the future so that I can give Ms. Yaxley a heads up." Roxanne gave cold looks to the two people in front of her. When Aubrey met Roxanne's eyes, a strange sensation struck her, and she subconsciously clamped her mouth shut. Lucian, on the other hand, scowled and looked at Roxanne gloomily. A long while later, Roxanne curled her lips self-deprecatingly. "Don't worry, Ms. Pearson, I get your point. I'll stay away from Essie from now on, but I hope you'll be able to take good care of Essie and not let something like this happen again." Right after she made those utterances, she went into the car without giving them a chance to respond to her. Lucian drew his brows tightly together as he watched her leave. Though he wished she would not take off so unhesitatingly, he could not bring himself to say anything to make her stay when he thought about the look she had on her face earlier. Meanwhile, Aubrey did not expect Roxanne to point out her fault in front of Lucian before leaving. Her countenance slowly stiffened as she watched Roxanne's car disappear from her line of sight. Then, she carefully turned to look at the man beside her. Lucian. Lucian was upset, so he was visibly impatient when he spoke to her. What else do you want to say? You were the one in charge of sending Essie to and from her school these days. Did her teacher not tell you anything about Essie's situation in school? Overwhelmed with guilt, Aubrey lowered her gaze. Ms. Yaxley did tell me that Essie seemed down recently, but I didn't put it to heart because I thought that was how Essie usually behaved. It never hit me that an incident like this would happen. If not for Roxanne finding out about it in time, what do you think would have happened to Essie this time? Lucian questioned coldly. Aubrey hastily tried to shrink from the blame. Lucian, I really didn't know about these matters. You are well aware of Essie's condition. She's never quite excited. Moreover, something like that happened on her first day of kindergarten when Ms. Yaxley told me about it. She only said that Essie wasn't enthusiastic in class, so thought, in other words, she was blaming Pamela for not looking more into Estella's situation. That innuendo of hers did not go unnoticed by Lucian, whose expression darkened instantly. When were you planning to tell me about this if I hadn't asked? His sharp words had Aubrey stumped for words. After a moment of silence, she tentatively uttered, I shouldn't have neglected this, I should have told you about it right away then. She quickly added, Lucian, I really care about Essie. I was in a meeting earlier, but once I received Ms. Yaxley's message, I hurried over without wrapping up the meeting before she could finish her sentence. Lucian cut her off in annoyance. If Essie is disturbing you from your work at Pearson Group, I'd say it's best that I stop troubling you with Essie's matters from now on. Aubrey froze. Lucian was willing to continue with the engagement on one condition, and that was to get Estella to accept her. However, if he refused to let her get involved with Estella anymore, she would have no means to make the little girl accept her. In that case, her engagement with him would be broken off. Lucian, please give me one more chance. I won't let something like this happen again. Aubrey pleaded, reaching out to grab Lucian's arm. However, he avoided her hands and uttered, if this happens again, I'll announce to the public that the engagement between us has been called off. Aubrey's heart sank when those words entered her ears. Nevertheless, she soon realized that Lucian was actually giving her another chance. With that thought in mind, she let out a sigh of relief and nodded fervently. I'll be picking Essie up this evening. Go back to your meeting, Lucian said to Aubrey in a frosty tone. The woman dared not say anything else. After all, it had been hard for her to get him to give her another chance, and she did not want to mess things up again. Only after watching Lucian leave did Aubrey plod back into her car. However, she did not drive toward Pearson Group. The meeting she mentioned earlier was only a lie to make Lucian think that Estella was important to her. The Pearsons had come to one tacit conclusion: Aubrey's most important task was to get Lucian to marry her as soon as possible. Hence, her father had been taking care of everything in Pearson Group while she only went there once in a while. Most of her time was spent thinking of ways to get in Lucian's good graces. Just as her hard work was finally coming to fruition, Roxanne's few sentences destroyed all the time and effort she had poured into the matter. Enraged, Aubrey wished she could skin Roxanne alive. Alas, Lucian was present then, so she had no choice but to suppress her fury. It did not help that he had given her such a stern warning that only served to fan the flames of anger in her heart. I have to teach that a lesson. Presuming that Roxanne should be at the research institute at that moment, Aubrey headed straight for that place. Roxanne was mentally and physically exhausted after leaving Estella's kindergarten initially. She planned to check on the little girl before returning to the research institute to continue her work. However, she no longer had any energy to spare. Roxanne did not know whether it was because Aubrey's earlier words had upset her, but she found herself in a daze, unsure where to go. As such, she ended up driving aimlessly around the city until the sky darkened, and it was time to pick Archie and Benny up. Only then did she finally head toward their kindergarten. The moment she arrived, the boys were done with their classes. They were already rushing toward her in excitement before she could even get out of the car. At that sight, Roxanne stayed in the car and unlocked the car doors for them. Once they got in, she took their bags from them. Seeing the expectant looks on the boys' faces made her heart sink. She knew they were that excited because they were aware that she went to visit Estella that day. They wanted to know how the little girl was doing. If Estella were doing well, she would not hesitate to tell them about it. Unfortunately, what she had seen was the scenario the boys dreaded the most. Roxanne did not know how to break it to them. "Mommy, how's Essie?" Benny asked when he heard nothing from her. She lowered her gaze as a wave of resignation washed over her. "Essie's doing okay. Her teacher takes very good care of her." That was the only thing Roxanne could think of to say to them. Technically, it was not a lie. The teacher in Estella's class was sure to focus more on the little girl after that incident. Regardless of whether or not Estella would get on well with her classmates, she would never be bullied anymore. Finding their mother's response strange, the boys worriedly asked, "Then did Essie see you?" Roxanne nodded stiffly. "Then, Mommy, did you tell her that we miss her a lot too?" Benny queried in his adorable voice. Roxanne kept her eyes focused on the road, not daring to meet the boys' innocent gazes. "I did." Upon returning to their mansion, Roxanne went to prepare dinner while the boys ran upstairs. "Archie, was Mommy lying to us just now?" Benny could not help but ask his older brother right after he closed the bedroom door. Archie frowned, his countenance utterly taut. "I sensed that there was something very weird about Mommy's tone and expression as well when she answered us just now. In fact, she even avoided our gazes on purpose. It's obvious that Mommy lied to us, but why? Could it be that Essie is having a tough time? Or could it be that Mommy didn't go to see Essie?" The boys could not stop thinking about those two possibilities. "Should we visit Essie ourselves?" Benny anxiously put forth a suggestion when he did not get a response from his older brother after a long wait. Archie shook his head. "Let's ask Mommy first. There must be a reason she lied to us. Mommy has been acting very weirdly ever since we came home today. Could it be that she bumped into Daddy when she went to see Essie?" At the thought of that possibility, he cast a glance at Benny and decided against voicing his speculation after a few seconds of hesitation. His younger brother was too impulsive in matters concerning Estella. Since he was worried about her as well, he was afraid that Benny would sway him should he divulge his conjecture. In their bedroom, Archie and Benny discussed ways to get their mother to tell them the truth. In the meantime, Aubrey, beside herself with fury, was driving toward Roxanne's house. Earlier in the afternoon, she had gone to the research institute. Not daring to raise a ruckus at that place lest she create more problems for herself, she opted to obtain Roxanne's whereabouts by asking around. By the time she managed to confirm that the latter was absent from the research institute, hours had passed. It was almost time for kindergarten students to finish their classes, so Aubrey rushed to the kindergarten, but she got there too late. At that point, she was extremely exasperated because she had missed Roxanne twice in a row. Aubrey sped to Roxanne's house, slammed her car door behind her, and strode to the entrance of the mansion. After pressing the doorbell twice, she soon heard footsteps within the house, followed closely by Roxanne's voice. "Who is it?" Roxanne asked. She could not fathom why she would have visitors so late at night. Aubrey took a deep breath and shouted, "It's me. Open up." When Roxanne heard her voice, she halted in her tracks abruptly and replied indifferently, "I'm sorry, Ms. Pearson, but I'm making dinner for my kids. I don't think I have the time to entertain you. Please go home." Considering how their encounter at the kindergarten entrance that day went badly, she was certain that the other woman had come to find fault with her. That was why Roxanne was not planning on opening the door for her guest. "To think that you still remembered that you have 2 children." Standing on the other side of the door, Aubrey cursed, "Don't you dare forget the fact that you and Lucian are already divorced and that you gave birth to 2 bastards. How dare you pester Lucian? Do you have no shame? With your current circumstances, do you think the Farwells will accept you into their family? Stop dreaming." Roxanne did not expect such maniacal behavior from Aubrey. Her face darkened as she uttered, "I won't forget that. You may leave now." She did not want things to turn ugly since her children were upstairs. Much to her annoyance, however, Aubrey, seemingly provoked, continued hurling a tirade of abuse. In fact, her voice was getting louder. "Are you finally scared of me now? Is that why you're asking me to leave? Well, too late. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk badly about me before Lucian, you?" Aubrey roared. Aubrey was getting out of line. Afraid that Archie and Benny could hear her, Roxanne decided to open the door and confront her. "Are you done, Ms. Pearson? If you are, please leave," she uttered. When Aubrey saw that Roxanne had finally stepped out of the mansion, she became even more enraged. "How dare you come out? What is it? Are you hoping for Lucian to come over to help you?" she snarled at the sight of the latter's face. Annoyed, Roxanne frowned. "As I've said before, I'll distance myself from them. I only went to the kindergarten today because I wanted to know how Essie was doing. If those kids didn't bully her, I wouldn't have met Mr. Farwell, and no one would have known I was there." Then, she enunciated a promise. "From now on, as long as Essie is well, I'll stay out of your lives." "You've got to be kidding me." Disdain was written all over Aubrey's face. "Do you think I would still believe your words? Where are those 2 bastards? Get them to come out. I want to show them their mother's true colors. They should know how you've seduced someone else's fiancé." Roxanne's expression turned grim when she heard her words. "Aubrey Pearson, get out of here if you're done making a scene, or else I'll call the police." Go on. I'd like to see if the police will side with me, Lucian's fiancé, or you, the homewrecker. Aubrey sneered. At that moment, Archie and Benny had just finished their discussion, and they could vaguely hear an argument going on downstairs. It sounded like someone called Mommy a homewrecker. Perplexed, the boys ran to the balcony and looked downward, only to find Aubrey standing in front of the entrance of their mansion. She was scolding their mother with sheer venom in her expression. Listen to me, you'll never get Lucian's attention no matter what you do. He didn't have feelings for you 6 years ago, and that hasn't changed since then. I'm the only woman who's worthy enough to be by his side. Aubrey fumed. Besides, there's no way the Farwell family would accept those tube-starred children of yours. It was as though she uttered that reminder because she was afraid Roxanne had forgotten all about it. Hearing her repeatedly call Archie and Benny with such a derogatory term infuriated Roxanne, who walked up to her with a frosty expression. What's the matter with you? Are you going to hit me? Aubrey mocked. As soon as those words fell from her lips, a cute voice rang out from above. Watch out, Mommy! In the next second, cold water poured down on Aubrey, drenching her from head to toe. The woman froze momentarily before she regained her senses a few moments later and looked up furiously. On the balcony, Benny stood on a stool and made a face at her. There's no way Mr. Farwell would fall for an evil woman like you. You little bastard! Get down here! I swear I'll teach you rascals a lesson! Aubrey yelled at Archie and Benny hysterically. However, the boys were not the least bit intimidated by her. This is what you get for scolding our mommy, you evil woman! Overwhelmed with rage, Aubrey wanted to walk past Roxanne to storm upstairs. Archie's and Benny's rash actions took Roxanne by surprise as well. However, she could not deny that she was inexplicably exhilarated by it. Despite that, she was worried that Aubrey would try and harm the boys, considering how angry the latter looked. Therefore, she gave her a stiff apology on behalf of her children. Ms. Pearson, they didn't do it on purpose. They're just kids, so please forgive them. With that, Roxanne looked up and shot a glance at Archie and Benny, signaling them to go along with her. Pouring water on her to vent our anger is sufficient. We'll only end up on the losing end if we get into another trouble. However, Archie and Benny acted as though they did not notice her gaze. With arms akimbo, they uttered matter-of-factly, "We did it on purpose. Let's see if you still dare to scold Mommy." Starts. Aubrey wanted to dash into the house as if she had gone berserk. Since things had already gone to that extent, Roxanne saw no point in backing down. Hence, she stood firm at the entrance and blocked Aubrey's way. "Why are you so mad, Ms. Pearson? You were the one who came to our house today and made a violent outburst. Archie and Benny were just returning the favor." All of a sudden, Aubrey stood still. "It must have been your doing. You must have taught them to do this," she roared in between pants. With that, she lifted her hand and swung it toward Roxanne, who had been keeping her guard up. The latter swiftly raised her hand and jabbed a finger at an acupuncture point on Aubrey's arm. Aubrey instantly felt her arm going numb and weak. Before she could come to her senses, she received a tight slap across her face. Roxanne did not hold back in that slap. The impact was so strong that Aubrey felt her mind going blank. It took her a long while to snap out of it. When she finally did, she stared at Roxanne in disbelief. "You? How dare you hit me?" "I just did what you were going to do to me," the latter answered with an icy expression. As soon as Roxanne finished her sentence, she shoved Aubrey aside. Caught off guard, Aubrey staggered 2 steps backward and almost rolled down the stairs before the entrance. "This is a matter between us adults. Why did you have to involve my kids, Ms. Pearson? That's rather disgraceful of you, don't you think?" Roxanne paused and added expressionlessly, "Take that slap as a warning. If you dare to lay a finger on Archie and Benny, I'll make sure you regret your actions." As soon as Aubrey stabilized herself, she made a lunge at Roxanne. Roxanne lifted her leg slightly and kicked an acupuncture point on Aubrey's knee. Again, Aubrey ended up staggering backward in pain. "You're no match for me. If I want to make you suffer, I can do so easily." Roxanne was merely stating facts. "Please don't forget about my expertise, Ms. Pearson." As a traditional medicine practitioner famous for her prowess in acupuncture, she was extremely familiar with all the acupuncture points on the human body as well as knowing how much pressure to exert on which acupuncture point in order to bring about the desired effects. Although the knowledge could save the lives of others, it could also be used as a form of self-defense. Aubrey flushed with rage from having suffered twice at the hands of Roxanne, but she dared not retaliate recklessly. "Why aren't you leaving yet?" Roxanne snapped. Because of what she had done earlier, Aubrey shuddered unconsciously at her shout. Upon realizing her reaction, Aubrey blushed crimson with embarrassment. She then acted tough, yelling, "Just you wait." With that, she gritted her teeth and left. After getting into her car, however, she stared at the mansion from afar instead of driving off immediately. By then, Roxanne had turned around and gone back into the mansion. Archie and Benny were still on the balcony, making faces at her in a smug manner. Their complacent behavior caused Aubrey's features to twist into a fearsome expression of fury. "Those two bastards! They'd better pray that they won't ever fall into my hands. Otherwise, I swear I'll make their lives a living hell." She stayed outside the mansion for quite a while before flooring the accelerator and driving away. In the mansion, Roxanne suppressed her anger and continued preparing dinner. Once she was done, she hollered at Archie and Benny to get them to come downstairs for dinner. At that moment, the boys were already waiting at the landing. They had fun taking revenge on Aubrey earlier, but after watching her leave, they quickly realized that their action could very well upset Roxanne. Hence, they had been waiting at the landing, expecting their mother to lecture them. "Come downstairs for dinner," Roxanne called out to the boys after heaving a sigh inwardly. Archie and Benny came down the stairs obediently. As soon as they saw her, they admitted their mistake by saying, "Mommy, we're sorry." Before Roxanne could utter a word in response, Benny added, "However, I don't think we did anything wrong. That evil woman scolded you. We wanted to protect you, Mommy." The sight of Aubrey berating their mother infuriated the brothers so much that they acted impulsively, grabbing a watering can nearby and pouring the water on the wicked woman's head. If Aubrey had dared to continue scolding Roxanne, the boys would not hesitate to empty another can of water over her, even if their mother would be angry at them. Roxanne's heart softened at Benny's words. However, her expression was still tense as she replied, "I know you two care about me, but stay out of it if something like this happens again in the future. Just let me handle it. Don't intervene." Benny retorted, "Mommy, you two might think that you are protecting me, but at the same time, you are putting yourselves in danger. What if Ms. Pearson takes revenge on you two in the future? Don't you think I would be worried about that?" Roxanne interrupted with a frown. Archie and Benny exchanged glances sheepishly before lowering their heads. "We're sorry, Mommy. We were too impulsive." Although they had yet to find proof, they speculated that someone had paid the older children to beat them up. It isn't hard to figure out who the instruction came from. If that evil woman could do something like that, she could also take revenge on us. We didn't think things through. Only after Roxanne saw that the boys had realized their mistake did she relax her tense expression. "Also, I would like to thank you for protecting me just now." With that, she bent over to hug them. "However, don't act so rashly next time. Although you two want to protect me, I also want to protect you." Archie and Benny nodded obediently. Due to the disruption caused by Aubrey, they did not manage to ask about Estella. Nevertheless, they were dying to know the answers to the questions in their minds. After returning to their bedroom, they started discussing ways to ask Roxanne about it in the future. Meanwhile, Roxanne lay in her bed with conflicted feelings. "I merely wanted to check on Essie. Who would have thought that so many things would end up happening instead? Not only have I met Lucian, but I've also gotten into conflict with Aubrey." At that moment, Lucian's words and scenes of Estella getting bullied were playing on a loop in her mind. Upon realizing what was on her mind, Roxanne bolted upright and shook her head violently. "Why am I still thinking about those things? I've already promised Aubrey I would stay away from them." While she was getting frustrated with herself, her phone that was on the table rang. Getting a grip on herself, Roxanne glanced down at her phone and saw Jack's name on the screen. "It's already so late at night. What does Jack want from me again?" She then picked up her phone in confusion. The second the call was connected, Jack's voice came through the receiver. "Hi, Ms. Jarvis. Am I interrupting your sleep?" Roxanne sounded tired when she replied, "No. I was just done getting ready for bed, but I hadn't laid down yet. What can I do for you, Mr. Damaris?" Jack chuckled and said, "That's good, then. From tomorrow onward, our research is entering the key stage. My grandpa wants me to support the research fully. Hence, I may be visiting the Research Institute more frequently starting tomorrow. I hope you won't find me a nuisance, Ms. Jarvis." Roxanne's spirits finally lifted at the mention of their research. "We successfully completed the first stage of our research this morning, proving that the efforts we've put in all this time haven't been in vain. Starting tomorrow, we'll be embarking on a new and even more challenging stage." Just thinking about the results their research would bring filled her heart with anticipation. She also greatly welcomed Jack's assistance. "I'd be honored if you could come and help us, of course. Why would I find you a nuisance?" He let out a low chuckle. "That's good to know. It's late, so I shan't disturb you any further. See you tomorrow." Roxanne assented with a laugh. Thanks to Jack's phone call, she gradually felt calmer. Finally, she drifted into a peaceful sleep while thinking about the new research she would be doing the following day. Early the following morning, she sent Archie and Benny to the kindergarten, then hurried to the research institute. She thought she was early, but to her surprise, Jack was there before her. When she arrived, he and Colby were standing in the corridor, deep in conversation. Both of them looked very serious. Roxanne waited quietly at the side and did not interrupt. It took a long while before they wrapped up their discussion, and only then did she pipe up apologetically, "I'm sorry I'm late." Jack flashed her an understanding smile. "That's all right. I know you have to drop off the kids at kindergarten. In any case, we're not on a time crunch here. Your children are much more important." Since he had taken the words right out of Colby's mouth, the latter could only give a tight smile as he greeted Roxanne. "Good morning, Dr. Jarvis." Then, the trio walked alongside each other toward the research facility while chatting about the project's progress. Suddenly, Jack turned to look at Colby and said, "Oh, right. I forgot to mention I'm officially participating in this research from today onward. I look forward to working with you, Dr. Galloway." Colby's expression stiffened for a fleeting moment when he heard those words. Just as Roxanne looked over, however, he quickly composed himself and smiled pleasantly. "I'm sure our research will go on even more smoothly with your participation." After uttering that reply, he lowered his gaze, hiding his emotions behind the thin lenses of his glasses. Even before this, Jack has been coming to the research institute almost daily. He's practically glued to Roxanne. Now that he's so-called officially participating in the research, there's no saying how much closer they'll become. A wave of jealousy washed over him as the image of Roxanne and Jack being together all day appeared in his mind. Whether on purpose or not, Jack's lips quirked into an unfathomable smile after he dropped the bomb. It was not long before they entered the research facility. Roxanne formally introduced Jack to the other researchers, who welcomed him warmly, then led him to their laboratory bench. Initially, they only carried out pre-testing in small batches. Hence, the bench prepared by her was not that large. There was just enough space for two people to work together. Previously, Colby and Roxanne were the ones working on the pre-tests together. With the addition of Jack, however, Colby had no choice but to relinquish his spot and play second fiddle. After preheating the apparatus, Roxanne prepared to add the materials. When she turned around, the materials that had been weighed out were already passed to her. She was momentarily surprised. Then, she lifted her gaze and looked at Jack with a smile before accepting the materials and continuing with the experiment. Perhaps because the pair had worked together to some extent during that previous period, she found they had good teamwork. If she had to compare it to collaborating with Colby, she did not find it much different. Watching Roxanne and Jack working in harmony with each other made the flames of jealousy in Colby's heart blaze even more fiercely. The pre-testing went on for 3 whole days. By the end of it, they succeeded in testing the various properties of the finished product and determining its basic feasibility. Only then did they start gradually increasing the dosage. Following the increased quantity of medicinal herbs used, the stamina required for the experiment also gradually rose. Due to the delicate nature of the experiment, they could not add the materials all at once. Instead, they could only stand watch at the laboratory bench and add it slowly, a little at a time. On top of that, it was not easy to obtain the materials. Hence, they had to be extra careful while adding them. Noticing the beads of sweat on Roxanne's forehead, Jack offered in a low voice, "Let me do it." As he spoke, he made to take the materials from her. However, she dodged his hand cautiously. She was worried about spilling the materials and dared not move about too much or abruptly. Nonetheless, that action was enough to indicate her refusal. After all, there was no one else she trusted more than herself to carry out such a delicate task. Seeing that, Jack raised his brows but did not insist any further. Instead, he grabbed 2 pieces of tissue from the side and said, "You're sweating. I'll help to dab it off." Without waiting for her to respond, he stretched his hand toward her forehead. Absorbed in observing the process of the experiment, the sudden realization that his hand was in front of her face took her by surprise, and she subconsciously jerked her head away. For a moment, Jack's hand froze in mid-air. Only when Roxanne noticed the tissues in his hand did it finally dawn on her what he had wanted to do. Even so, she felt a sense of repulsion in her heart. "Thanks, Mr. Damaris, but I can do it myself," she uttered after returning to her senses, breaking the awkward atmosphere rather abruptly. Then, she took the tissues from him. Jack smiled nonchalantly in response. The sight of his smile threw her into a daze for a brief moment. No matter how I think about it, what he tried to do earlier seems like a rather intimate gesture. Looking at that smile on his face now, however, I can't help feeling that perhaps that ambiguous feeling was merely my imagination. Just as she was wondering whether she had read too much into it, Jack reached for the tissues in her hand that she had used to wipe her sweat as though it was the most natural thing in the world. That caused her to waver again. Meanwhile, jealousy and rage intermingled within Colby as he watched the pair interact as if they were the only people in the room. If this goes on, sooner or later, something is bound to happen between those two. At that thought, he furrowed his brows and strode over to Roxanne. "You must be tired by now, Dr. Jarvis. Why don't you rest for a while? I can take over here. I can't let these two spend any more time alone." Roxanne was also at a loss for how to face Jack, so she went along with his suggestion. "Okay, then. Thanks." Suppressing the raging jealousy in his heart, Colby shot her a reassuring smile. Soon, she was standing at one side, leaving the 2 men at the bench by themselves. After discarding the tissues, Jack turned around and gave Colby a cryptic smile. "It's a pleasure to work with you, Dr. Galloway. Mr. Damaris, since you're specifically here to assist with the research, please don't do anything unnecessary," Colby replied, looking somewhat grim. Jack snorted. "How can you be sure it's unnecessary? Who knows? I may gain some unexpected results after the research is concluded." Both of them understood the unspoken meaning behind their conversation. Colby's gaze darkened instantly when he heard Jack's reply. That was because he knew there was a high possibility that what Jack said would turn into reality after seeing how well the latter got along with Roxanne. His fury spiked as that prospect crossed his mind. "I've been by Roxanne's side for so long, yet she isn't even willing to spare me a glance. How can I possibly let Jack get his way?" The atmosphere between the two men turned silent abruptly as both kept quiet afterward. Colby looked down at the experiment, his mind racing with various thoughts. I cannot allow Jack and Roxanne to interact further in this manner. I must think of a way. All of a sudden, Jack's phone rang. The man looked at the incoming caller ID and smiled apologetically at the other two in the room. Excuse me. My grandpa is calling me. He probably wants to check on the progress of our experiment. Roxanne nodded in understanding. Soon, Jack left the research facility with his phone. Roxanne wanted to step forward to help out, but Colby waved his hand in dismissal. You can stay there and get some rest. The reaction has already started. I can keep watch by myself. Once the reaction began, there would not be much for them to do. Their only task would be to monitor the entire process to ensure no accident happened. Hearing that, Roxanne did not insist further and returned to her seat. She could not help but be reminded of Jack's gesture earlier. Even though she could not fathom his intention, based on that earlier incident alone, she felt that she had to keep a distance from him. Meanwhile, Colby stole glances at Roxanne before carefully picking up a bottle of material on the laboratory bench. Seizing the moment of her inattention, he cautiously added another part of the liquid from that bottle into the flask and swiftly replaced the bottle on the bench. He was quick with his actions, not to mention the material he poured was colorless and odorless as a result. When Roxanne came closer to inspect the progress of the reaction, she did not notice anything unusual. Not long after, Jack returned from outside. Roxanne asked concernedly, "What did old Mr. Damaris say?" "Grandpa told me to assist you all to the best of my abilities after learning that the experiment is progressing smoothly." He beamed at her. In response, she nodded and fell silent afterward. Suddenly, Colby turned around to look at them. Should this phenomenon be present during the experiment? His voice was filled with puzzlement. Hearing his query, Roxanne and Jack were momentarily stunned before hastening over to the bench. An icy glint flashed across Colby's eyes, and he stepped aside to let them check out the situation. White smoke was billowing from the flask. Even the stopper was shaking vigorously as if the whole thing was going to explode. What's going on? Roxanne was utterly bemused. She had never observed something like that during the previous pre-tests. Did we add too many materials at once, and the conditions for the reaction failed to keep up? Possessing an inquisitive spirit, Roxanne stopped the reaction and opened the stopper to figure out what was happening inside the flask. As she knew that reaction would not produce any poisonous or harmful substance, she did not take any safety measures. Colby's pupils constricted when he saw she had unstoppered the flask. He stretched out his hand, wanting to drag her backward. However, he thought of something the next second and retracted his hand ultimately. Conversely, Jack reacted promptly and pulled Roxanne to his side. "Be careful." He caught a whiff of a familiar smell. "This is a poisonous gas, and it's one with relatively high toxicity." Roxanne had also perceived the scent. Unfortunately, as she was too close to the flask, she inhaled a large amount of the gas at once. Instantaneously, she experienced the symptoms of poisoning dizziness. Roxanne mustered her strength to warn them. "Something's wrong. Quick, tell everyone to exit the building." Jack glanced at Colby, who got moving at once and started evacuating the personnel inside the research facility. At the same time, Jack immediately helped Roxanne to retreat. Arriving at the corridor with better ventilation, Jack asked Roxanne about her condition concernedly. "How are you feeling?" He had been near the flask's opening as well, but his symptoms of poisoning were not as severe because he reacted in time. Roxanne's head was spinning terribly. Still, she forced herself not to succumb to vertigo. Staring at the research facility's entrance, she asked, "Has everyone moved out of the building?" The gas was very poisonous and spread rapidly. She was afraid there might be other researchers who were poisoned as well. The sight of her still worrying about others when she was in that sickly state tugged at Jack's heartstrings. "Dr. Galloway is already evacuating the premise. Don't worry." After answering her, he grasped her wrist to check her condition. Instinctively, Roxanne wanted to avoid the physical contact, but she did not even have the strength to lift her arm. Something is very off with this reaction. This poisonous gas shouldn't be present regardless of how erroneous our experiment had gone, Jack elaborated to her while performing the examination. Naturally, she was aware of that too. However, she did not have the energy to discuss that matter with him at that moment. Soon, Colby, leading a group of researchers, came running out, leaving a few more experienced researchers to handle the emergency. They surrounded Roxanne while engaging in a heated discussion. "How's Dr. Jarvis? Shouldn't this kind of dangerous experiment be performed in the designated laboratory? What happened today? How did this poisonous gas come to be?" More questions ensued as everyone expressed their doubts. The flow of air slowed down as more people gathered there. Roxanne's face grew paler. Even her coughing sound gradually turned diminished. "Dr. Jarvis." Feigning worry, Colby crouched next to Jack and Roxanne. "Mr. Damaris, how is Dr. Jarvis doing?" Jack merely cast a dark look at him, ignoring him. The next second, Roxanne started coughing violently. "Oh no!" Jack's pupils constricted as he swiftly stretched out his hands. Roxanne's whole body went limp, and she passed out, slumping right into his outstretched arms. When Colby saw their intimate posture, his gaze darkened. Jack should have been the one to be severely poisoned. He only wanted something unfortunate to befall Jack so that the latter would be separated from Roxanne. Unexpectedly, his plan was not thorough enough, resulting in Roxanne being the one to unstop her the flask. To avoid exposing his wrongdoing, Colby could only stand by and watch as she ran the risk and inhaled a large amount of the poisonous gas. Of course, he was unwilling to endanger Roxanne and even wanted to reach out to stop her. However, on second thought, he would be wasting that chance and might even expose himself if he did so. Besides, even if Roxanne were the one to be poisoned, he would still achieve half of his goal. "I suppose she can only stay in the hospital for the time being and won't be free to spend time with Jack." Colby felt exhilarated at that thought. To conceal his emotions, he behaved hypocritically, standing up and glowering at the onlookers. "Why are all of you gathering here? Dr. Jarvis needs fresh air. Aren't you aware of basic knowledge like this?" Those experienced researchers hastily dispersed as if they had just recalled something important. Colby then said to Jack, "I'll contact the hospital." With that, he swiftly strode to one corner and took out his phone to make the call. Thereafter, seemingly remembering something, he searched for Lucian's number in his contact list, typed a message, and sent it to him. Throughout it all, his face was expressionless. Meanwhile, Lucian was having a weekly wrap-up meeting in a conference room at Farwell Group. Members of the upper management apprehensively looked at Lucian, who was sitting at the end of the table. They had been cautious for the past 2 days, for Lucian seemed to be in a bad mood. The tension in the conference room was so thick one could cut it with a knife, and when it was time for progress reports, they all walked on eggshells, fearing a single mistake from them would send Lucian flying into a rage. The directors of departments with terrible performances didn't even dare to raise their heads during the meeting. Everyone held their breaths in dread until a knock came on the door. The director who was presenting stopped talking and followed the lines of sight of his colleagues. Everyone in the conference room focused their attention on the door. The door opened to reveal an awkward Caden standing in the doorway, holding my phone. Caden shot an apologetic smile at the rest before turning to look at Lucian with a troubled expression. "Mr. Farwell, your phone." Lucian, who was already in a bad mood, got even more furious when the meeting was disrupted. His expression turned stonier than ever, and he was seconds away from chewing Caden out. On second thought, however, he figured Caden had been working for him long enough to know not to disturb a meeting unless there was something important. Lucian suppressed his anger at that thought and gestured for Caden to bring his phone over. Caden discreetly let out a sigh of relief and hurried into the room. He even clicked on the text message, displaying it on the screen before handing it over to Lucian. When Lucian reached for the phone, Caden deliberately glanced at the screen, implying Lucian to look at it. Noticing Caden's out-of-the-ordinary behavior, Lucian followed his line of sight and dropped his gaze to the phone. With a glance, Lucian caught the name Jarvis on the screen. His eyebrows furrowed as he perused the message carefully. It was a message from Colby that read, "Dr. Jarvis accidentally inhaled some poisonous gas during an experiment. She is currently unconscious." Caden hesitated for a while when he saw the contents of the message. "Mr. Farwell is seemingly not on speaking terms with Ms. Jarvis lately. Moreover, he has clearly decided to go about his marriage engagement with Ms. Pearson." Thus, Caden was conflicted about whether he should inform Lucian about the news. Recalling how concerned Lucian was about Roxanne's matters, however, Caden decided to bite the bullet in the end and brought the phone to the conference room. At that moment, he was studying Lucian's expression intently without blinking, afraid that his action was unnecessary and would end up making Lucian angry. He watched as Lucian's expression turned darker. Even the members of the upper management who sat further away could sense the atmosphere in the room growing tenser by the minute. "Today's meeting ends here. I want each person in charge to submit a written document of the remaining part to Caden," Lucian ordered as he rose from his seat. Without waiting for a response, Lucian left the room in a hurry. Poisoned during an experiment? What is Roxanne doing? How could she not prioritize her safety after conducting so many years of experiments? The directors in the conference room exchanged confused glances. Lucian had always prioritized work over everything else during his years as Farwell Group's CEO. However, recently, they had seen Lucian suspend numerous meetings midway due to unknown reasons. Though the meetings weren't important, Lucian's behavior was still shocking to them. Caden silently exhaled a sigh of relief. "Fortunately, it seems I didn't do anything unnecessary." From the look on Mr. Farwell's face, it's apparent Ms. Jarvis is important to him. I hope this incident can improve the relationship between the two. Back at the research institute, Jack carried Roxanne into her office. Even though the hallway was spacious and he could have just treated Roxanne there, concerned employees would occasionally stick their noses into the situation. Plus, he also needed a quiet environment to treat Roxanne. At the same time, Colby returned to the hallway after sending the message only to find out Jack and Roxanne were gone. Where's Dr. Jarvis? Colby grabbed one of the researchers, his expression grim. The researcher was briefly taken aback before pointing at Roxanne's office. I think I saw Mr. Damaris carrying her into the office. A dark glint flashed across Colby's eyes when he heard that. He then nodded at the researcher. Thanks. Before the researcher could respond, Colby strode toward the office. I just took my gaze off them for 1 second, and Jack took that window to create an opportunity for them to be alone. Luckily, I'm confident in my skill. I'm sure there's no way Jack can easily succeed in treating Roxanne. If Jack wants to use his chance to please Roxanne, he's basically dreaming. With that in mind, Colby slowed down his pace. He took his time walking over to Roxanne's office. After putting on a worried look, he knocked on the door. Jack was in the midst of examining Roxanne's condition when he heard knocking on the office door. Subsequently, Colby entered the room with a look of concern. Mr. Damaris, how's Dr. Jarvis? I've already contacted the hospital. We can head over there any time. Jack merely cast a glance at him. Please open all the windows. Roxanne needed someone by her side at that moment. Hence, even though Jack knew the room needed to be ventilated, he couldn't step away from her. Colby's arrival was just in time. A flicker of anger rose within Colby at the proximity between Jack and Roxanne, coupled with Jack's commanding tone. He was about to lose his temper but soon kept himself in check, for he was confident Jack wouldn't be able to treat Roxanne no matter how hard he tried. When the wrath within Colby ebbed away, he cooperatively opened all the windows before approaching Jack and Roxanne. Mr. Damaris, did you bring Dr. Jarvis back to her office because you came up with a way to treat her? Jack furrowed his eyebrows at the question. Not yet. I can only try. Colby curled the corners of his lips into a discreet smile before asking with concern, oh, what's wrong with Dr. Jarvis then? Do you know what poisoned her? Both of you worked together on the experiment for the past 2 days. I thought it should be safe. He sounded as if he had absolutely nothing to do with it. Jack had his suspicions about Colby's involvement, but he was busy checking in on Roxanne's condition at the moment that he didn't have time to think. Hearing Colby's question, Jack merely replied concisely, gas poisoning. Her lungs can't expel the poisonous gas lingering within, and now the poison had seeped into her blood. It has to be dealt with immediately. When he finished, he urgently demanded, prepare my acupuncture tools. I'm going to treat her this instant. Colby heeded his words and turned around, putting on an act of searching for Jack's acupuncture tools in the office. Jack's tone sounded as if he was confident in treating Roxanne. Colby would never let that happen, though. His intention was to have one of them step away from their research momentarily to create distance between them. Won't my plan backfire if Jack manages to treat Roxanne? Colby knew he couldn't say much under those circumstances and merely complied with Jack's demands. The best case scenario will be delaying the treatment until Lucian gets here and letting the two fight. Mr. Damaris, why don't we take Dr. Jarvis to the hospital? After finding the acupuncture tools, Colby was still trying to stall time. He held onto the medical kit, refusing to pass it to Jack. Jack got anxious and reached for the medical kit, but Colby dodged his hand. Colby urged Jack earnestly, "Dr. Jarvis is in a precarious condition. You said it yourself that you could only try. With her current condition, I don't think you have the option to fail." With that, he faked concern and added, "Moreover, you were right next to the flask, too. I'm sure you've inhaled some of the poisonous gas as well. I doubt you don't feel any discomfort." Jack frowned deeply at Colby's comment. "Lamb indeed feeling slightly dizzy, but I don't think that'll affect my treatment of Roxanne." In the meantime, Colby continued prattling on, "Even if you're fine, you can't guarantee you'll be able to treat Dr. Jarvis successfully, not to mention now that you're not feeling well. I've already contacted the hospital, and they're ready for us any time." Jack looked at the unconscious Roxanne and turned to regard Colby with a grave expression. "What are you playing at, Dr. Galloway?" Colby's heart skipped a beat when he heard Jack's question. Stealing himself, he countered, "I don't understand what you mean, Mr. Damaris. I'm just worried for Dr. Jarvis." "Then give me the medical kit," Jack hissed. A troubled expression marred Colby's countenance. "Mr. Damaris, I mean it. With Dr. Jarvis' current condition, it's best to take her to the hospital. Do you think I'm not as good as those doctors in the hospital?" Jack questioned coldly. Colby fell silent at his sharp remark. A few seconds later, he begrudgingly handed over the medical kit. "I'll be standing here, watching you. I want to help in case anything happens." Jack shot him a glare. "There's no need. Give me the medical kit, and you can leave." Judging from how Colby acted earlier, he didn't think Colby was genuinely concerned about Roxanne's condition. However, the latter turned a deaf ear to his command and remained at their side even until Jack had finished sterilizing the needles. Jack coldly ordered, "I have to take off Ms. Jarvis' clothes when I treat her later, so I'll have to ask you to leave." Shock filled Colby's eyes. "I think Dr. Jarvis won't appreciate being undressed by any man when she's unconscious. I hope you can respect her." Jack's eyebrows pinched together into a frown. "I'm only doing it to perform acupuncture on her. Why are you standing here? If you truly respect her, you should have left when I asked you to." The two were in a stalemate for a few seconds before Jack proceeded to unbutton Roxana's clothes. "Stop!" Colby could no longer keep the lid on his anger. "I didn't plan all this to let Jack take advantage of Roxanne like this." "Go away!" Jack snapped as he flung Colby's hand away. "We can't afford to delay treatment with Ms. Jarvis' condition. Do you want her to sink into a coma?" Hearing that, Colby gritted his teeth and retracted his hand. All he wanted was for Roxanne to fall sick. Roxanne falling into a coma wasn't something he wanted to witness. Moreover, he would be too suspicious if he continued to hinder Jack from treating Roxanne. At that thought, Colby took a step back while wearing a dark expression before glancing at the time. It had been nearly 20 minutes since he sent Lucian that message. Where is he? Why isn't he here yet? "Please excuse me," Jack said to the unconscious Roxanne before carefully reaching out to undo her button. Colby was grimacing as he watched Jack's actions. Right as Jack undid Roxanne's first button, a series of rapid footsteps rang out from outside the office. Colby's eyes lit up, but he quickly suppressed his excitement and looked at the door in faked confusion. On the other hand, Jack was too focused on treating Roxanne, so he did not hear the sounds at all. For ventilation purposes, the door to the office was wide open. The very second Lucian stepped into the office, he saw what Jack was doing. "What are you doing?" Lucian already disliked Jack because of the latter's relationship with Roxanne. Thus, he turned livid when he was greeted by the sight of Jack trying to take advantage of Roxanne while she was unconscious, and he dashed over right away. Before Jack could react, he was punched in the face and stumbled a few steps back before finally regaining his balance. "What are you trying to do to Roxanne while she's unconscious, Jack Damaris? I'm warning you now, you better stay away from her. She's mine." Lucian then pulled the unconscious Roxanne into his arms and glared at Jack viciously. Jack had inhaled toxic gas, so he was weaker than Lucian. After getting punched, he took a whole minute to recollect himself and instinctively attempt to retaliate. Nevertheless, when he registered who had arrived, he tamped down his fury and licked the corner of his scraped lips. "Ms. Jarvis has been poisoned. I'm afraid her life is in danger. I have to take off her shirt to perform acupuncture on her," he said in a low voice. When Lucian heard that, his eyes darkened, and he lowered his gaze to look at the woman in his arms. Earlier, when he received Colby's message, he was only informed about Roxanne's unconscious state from getting poisoned. There was no mention of her life being in danger. Even though he had made all the preparations for the worst-case scenario and had ordered the best hospital in the city to go on standby, he still couldn't help panicking when he heard the news. If anything happens to Roxanne... Jack lifted his hand to touch his injured cheek before walking back to Roxanne, intending to pick up where he left off. If Lucian had attacked him at a different time and place, Jack certainly would have returned the blow mercilessly. However, Roxanne's life was on the line, so Jack did not have time to settle the score with Lucian. "Get lost!" Yet, before he could even touch the woman, Lucian carried her in his arms and strode to the doorway. Jack froze. Once he realized what Lucian was trying to do, he hastily ran after him. "Lucian, Ms. Jarvis' situation is urgent. We can't waste any time at all. I might be able to treat her with the time you used to send her to the hospital." Lucian ignored him and continued walking toward the entrance of the research institute. At that, Jack snapped his brows together and turned to shoot a glare at Colby, who was still standing in the office, before following Lucian. An ambulance was already waiting at the entrance of the research institute, and a doctor and 2 nurses were waiting for Lucian's orders. The moment they saw Lucian stepping out of the building with Roxanne in his arms, they rushed over with a stretcher and swiftly placed Roxanne on it before carrying her into the ambulance. By the time Jack came rushing out, the ambulance had already left. Lucian was left standing at the entrance while wearing a grim look on his face and was about to get into his own car. Jack scanned the surroundings and saw no sign of Roxanne anywhere. Hastily, he walked over to stop Lucian, who was about to leave. "Where's Ms. Jarvis?" Lucian could not believe that the other man still had the audacity to come after him. He paused in his tracks and shot an icy glare at Jack. That's none of your business. Stay in your lane. I'll take care of my woman. Lucian Farwell. Jack found the man before him absolutely unreasonable. Do you know what situation Ms. Jarvis is in? She might die any time. It's fine if you don't want me to treat her, but you should have at least let me go with her. I can still give Roxanne emergency treatment if anything happens to her on the way to the hospital. As soon as he finished his sentence, he noticed the anger written all over Lucian's face. I told you this is none of your business. In fact, I'd like to ask you why you're so worried about my woman. Jack frowned. Have you been coveting her? Lucian snapped. Roxanne has explained to me that she bears no romantic feelings toward you. She only sees you as a business partner. Mr. Damaris, it's best if you stop acting on those feelings of yours. With that, Lucian glanced at the hand on his arm and snarled, "Let go." Jack ignored his warning and insisted, "I'll go with you to see her." Jack's insistence made Lucian's temper flare, and in the next second, Lucian raised his fist to punch the other man. Jack groaned in pain when he was hit in the stomach. Instinctively, he let go of Lucian and clutched his stomach. "Stay away from her. If you keep pestering her, then I'll have to start wondering if you were why she was poisoned," Lucian hissed as he fixed his gaze on Jack, his expression grim. Hearing that, Jack endured the intense pain in his stomach and gritted out, "Don't make baseless accusations. If I did that to her, then why would I bother trying to save her? I'm just worried about Ms. Jarvis." "Why then?" Lucian was already in the car. Without sparing Jack a glance, he answered, "I've already gotten the best doctor to be on standby, and I've made arrangements for her to be treated with the best equipment. There's no way you can cure her if those can't." With that said, he started the car and drove toward the hospital. "I've wasted too much time with Jack. I wonder how Roxanne is now." Meanwhile, anger thrummed in Jack's veins as he thought about the 2 punches he had to endure while watching Lucian drive off. "I hope Lucian will be plagued by regret for the rest of his life if anything happens to Roxanne. As for how he punched me twice, one day, I'll make him pay twice the price." "Mr. Damaris." Just as Jack was stewing in his anger, Colby ambled out of the research institute and pretentiously looked around. "Why are you alone? Where are Dr. Jarvis and Mr. Farwell? How is Dr. Jarvis now?" "Shut up." Jack was already filled with fury, and Colby's words only served to add fuel to the fire. A look of annoyance crept onto Jack's face. Colby froze before tentatively asking, "Is Dr. Jarvis?" Before he could finish his sentence, Jack interrupted him, "Colby, why did the experiment go wrong? What exactly happened?" At that, Colby tensed, and the hair on the back of his neck stood on end. Jack's tone sounded as if he already knew Colby was the one who had tampered with the experiment. "No. That's not possible. Jack wasn't around when I did it. Moreover, Roxanne's unconscious right now, so I'm the only one with the right to check the surveillance cameras of the lab. No one will be able to check the footage without my permission. Even TF Jack is suspicious about my involvement, there's nothing he can do TF I deny everything." With that thought in mind, Colby relaxed. "Weren't you the one who has been working on the experiment with Dr. Jarvis lately?" I wasn't sure about your experiment's details, and that's why I didn't dare to open the bottle right away. That's why I asked you guys to take a look at it." In other words, he was implying that he had stayed away from the lab countertop to ensure that the experiment would go smoothly without his presence. After hearing his explanation, Jack looked at him skeptically before saying, "Dr. Galloway, don't you think it's such a coincidence? Why did something happen precisely when I wasn't around?" Colby shrugged, his expression remaining unchanged. "I'm not sure either." Then, he shifted the topic and said, "What's most important now is Dr. Jarvis' condition. I wonder how she is right now. Where did Mr. Farwell take her to? Can we visit her?" The mention of Lucian caused a dark look to descend upon Jack's face again. Why did Lucian find out about Ms. Jarvis' poisoning? Colby suffered, but he soon uttered in a confident tone, "Dr. Jarvis seems to be in a good relationship with Mr. Farwell, who's in charge of the powerful Farwell Group of Horrington. Of course I'm going to look for Mr. Farwell after what happened to Dr. Jarvis. I was hoping he could provide her with the best medical resources." The grim look on Jack's face turned even more intense. "Dr. Galloway, have you forgotten that the Damaris family is more well known in the medical industry?" Colby retorted calmly, "I did, but you didn't seem like you were going to send her to the hospital, and I couldn't convince you otherwise. So, I had no choice but to look for Mr. Farwell." Jack glared at him for a few more seconds before uttering, "I hope that really was what happened." With that, Jack strode toward his car. Colby's voice sounded out behind him. "Mr. Damaris, when will we continue with our research?" As if he did not hear Colby, Jack closed his car door and drove away from the research institute. Jack had a sneaking suspicion that Colby was involved in both the poisoning incident and the fire at the research institute. However, for now, he neither had the evidence to prove that nor did he have the time to look into the matter. Although Colby was acting suspicious, there was one thing he had gotten right. What was most important at that moment was Roxanne's condition. Where did Lucian take her to? Delight danced in Colby's eyes as he watched Jack's car head down the road. He's finally gone. For the past few days, Colby would feel annoyed every time he saw Jack's luxury car parked by the research institute's entrance. He did not want to see Jack around at all. Even though Roxanne never really paid him any heed in the past, he had been the only one by her side in the research institute. Hence, Colby could lick to himself by thinking that he still had a chance with her. Yet, ever since Jack got into the picture, Jack had taken over Colby's position and diminished the last flicker of hope within him. At present, Colby finally got rid of Jack. In fact, it seemed like his efforts had not gone to waste. He had succeeded in pitting Lucian against Jack. If everything went as he planned, he could stand on the sidelines and watch the drama unfold. While Lucian and Jack were busy fighting against each other, he would choose the right time to appear by Roxanne's side. Colby refused to believe that Roxanne would still turn a blind eye to him by then. Right as Lucian arrived at the hospital director came over to greet him. "Mr. Farwell." The look of anger remained on Lucian's face. "How is she?" "She's in the emergency room. The doctors you hired are all inside as well," said the director with a meek smile as he trailed behind Lucian. Soon, Lucian came to a stop outside the emergency room as the medical staff gathered around him. The sign outside the emergency room was still lit, and no one knew what was going on inside. What did the specialists say when the ambulance reached? Lucian asked in a low voice. At that, the director sneaked a glance at Lucian's expression before frowning, troubled. Speak. Lucian whipped his head toward the director and glared at him. It was only then the director shakily said, "The specialists said that Ms. Jarvis is in a bad state. They can only do their best to save her, but they can't guarantee that they'll be able to succeed." Roxanne had made a name for herself in Horrington's medical field because of the previous news. Everyone was impressed by Roxanne, who was a rare sight in the medical field. Thus, the director recognized her as soon as she was brought into the hospital. After explaining the situation to Lucian, the director quickly added, "Please don't worry. We've changed the equipment in the emergency room to the top ones. As long as the specialists do their best, nothing will go wrong." Lucian knitted his brows. Even though he had already found out about Roxanne's situation from Jack, his heart still plummeted when he heard that even the specialists could not guarantee her safety. "Mr. Farwell, Ms. Jarvis is a good person, and nothing will happen to good people," the director reassured, trying his best to cheer Lucian up. However, Lucian only found him annoying and snapped, "You can leave now. I'll wait for her here by myself." Hearing that, the director clamped his mouth shut and sheepishly nodded. "Please let me know if you need anything." Then, he left the corridor with the group of doctors and nurses. Silence descended over the area. Lucian lifted his head to stare at the lit-up sign, feeling unusually frustrated. Ever since Roxanne came back to the country, she immersed herself in various research. I wonder if she ever expected a day like this where she would end up on the verge of death because of what she's passionate about. If she comes out of this safe and sound. Lucian's eyes darkened. If Roxanne comes out of this safe and sound, and if she gets back together with me, I won't let her work herself to death anymore. Alas, those were merely things he hoped would happen. Lucian tore his eyes away from the sign and sat down on the bench with a grimace. He then decided to stare at the door of the emergency room instead. It has only been 10 minutes since she went in. I can wait. Maybe those specialists have found a way to save her, Lucian reassured himself in his mind. Nonetheless, another wave of frustration hit him. What's going on with me? She won't come back to me anymore, so why should I get so anxious for her? Even if things do go wrong. Lucian gritted his teeth, struggling. So what if things do go wrong for her today? I've already found the best doctors and prepped the best medical equipment for her. I've been benevolent enough to do all that for her, so why am I sitting here, waiting for her now? With that thought in mind, Lucian moved to rise to his feet. However, when he looked at the closed doors, he could not lift his legs as if they were weighed down by lead. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.